Hello, and welcome to Badger Talks Live, which brings exciting happenings, resources, and talent from UW flagship campus to people of Wisconsin and beyond. I am Abby Van Owen. I'm from Green Bay, Wisconsin, and I'm a fourth-year student at the Wisconsin School of Business. Today, I'm pleased to introduce Elizabeth Tryon, Academic Staff Emeritus and former Assistant Director of the Morgridge Center. Today, you will learn about exemplary innovative community-engaged research by teams of UW's faculty, staff, students, and community partners around the state in celebration of our 175th anniversary of the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Projects highlighted involve environmental, health, and other sciences within the last 5 to 6 years, defined by the communities who seek expertise to aid in solving WIC problems. These projects have made a lasting impact across the state. Elizabeth Tryon is an expert on campus community partnerships, community-engaged learning and research, global engagement, and co-author of 2 books on the practice of academic community engagement. Please welcome Elizabeth Tryon.
Thanks so much for that, Abby. And thanks, Fran Pulio-Moyer and everybody at the Badger Talks office. And as Abby just said, this talk about research around the state of Wisconsin is in honor of the Wisconsin Science Festival, which is having all kinds of cool activities happening all around the state all week, and the 175th anniversary of UW-Madison. For those in the know, the septennial. Oh my God, who made that word up? As Abby said, I'm a UW staff emeritus. I was at the Morgridge Center for 12 years, connecting faculty, staff, and students with community partners to do research and other types of projects. My own graduate research is on how community partners perceived the help that the higher education was giving them. So I want to start out by giving you a little bit of history of research at UW-Madison, because you sort of need to know where you've been to decide where you're going. Then we'll cover a few different types of research, some exemplary projects, some ways that you can access UW-Madison to find out about research and partnering. And then first off, I want to kind of go over traditional research as the kind of research people usually think of when they hear that word. And that would be somebody hears about a problem, they decide to study it, so they form a hypothesis and they go do that. There's been a lot of great traditional research historically out of UW, and it's going to be continuing to be the way that a lot of research is best accomplished. Probably the most famous research project in Wisconsin that pretty much everybody in the Badger State has heard of, the Dairy State, is Harry Steenbach's vitamin D research, where he figured out that he could increase the vitamin D content of milk by ultraviolet light. And the really cool thing about it was he got a patent, but not for self-enrichment. He wanted to be sure that the public was protected from flawed preparations that evil corporate interests could copy. And all the money went to fund future UW research, which is where the WARF, Wisconsin Alumni Research Foundation, got its start. We also have in our state the Wisconsin idea, which is better and different than anybody else's idea. And Charles Van Hise, who was president back around the turn of the 1900s, said a bunch of really cool stuff about what he thought the purpose of academia and higher education was. And he really meant it to be something that would be beneficial to everyone. Some of his words got boiled down over time to being sort of like the boundaries of UW are the boundaries of the state, which to me is a little vague. So my go-to resource for this is always Gwen Drury's excellent essay, The Wisconsin Idea. She wrote a very comprehensive article talking about the rise of big business in the late 1800s and the level of government corruption. So the Wisconsin idea was meant to put the power in the hands of all of the people of the state, not just the wealthy few. And this was really drove a lot of progressive policies in Wisconsin in the 1900s. Still very important, at least at the university, this Wisconsin idea. But still, sometimes the word research can have a negative connotation to some people because of some past research projects that had some bad publicity and were honestly exploitive. But our former director, Kathy Kramer, who is a political science professor at UW-Madison, wrote this book that got a whole lot of traction about what happened that Scott Walker got elected in 2010, what was going on in the state. She talked to people outstate in small towns, and she found that rural voters were lumping college people and politicians kind of together as one big ball of wax that didn't appreciate them, and they were not getting their fair share of resources, which is actually untrue, but that was the perception. Kathy retells great stories about fancy UW research speedboats coming up to people's little small lakes and racing around, leaving a big wake in a no wake zone, and then being called on it and just being like, well, I don't care because I'm a researcher from UW. So what about people who do research differently than that? And of course, it only takes a few bad apples to spoil the barrel, right? So there are lots of good researchers out there, but there's also different kinds of research. And what I want to talk about today is community-based research, or CBR, and how it's different from traditional research. So first off, because society's problems, wicked problems we call them, are so complex now that sometimes a nuanced approach is needed rather than traditional. Also, in CBR, researchers will go and listen to the community first before even forming a hypothesis. So that is different from traditional research. The community might participate actively. There should be shared decision-making and funding, and data is co-owned by the community and shared with them in the way that they prefer. This is what's really groundbreaking at UW, folks, is the amount of infrastructure we have built and are still building to herd and corral all this research. Bear with me on the alphabet soup, and all these contact numbers will be at the last slide for you to take a picture of. Here's a powerhouse in the School of Medicine and Public Health, the Institute for Clinical and Translational Research, which contains the Collaborative Center for Health Equity, or CCHE, and the Community Academic Partnerships, or CAP. And they have research fellows doing that, listening to the community and getting the research projects to be formulated in a way that's beneficial to the community. One of these projects was funded by a Wisconsin Partnership Program grant done by my former colleague, Alex Adams. She puts a big P in her CBR to denote participation by the rural and urban Native communities. This has gone so successfully, it's gone into a new phase. So they're using tribal culture and resilience to overcome barriers to food security. And they put out their own survey talking about how they need better coordination. After the program, a parent wrote this in to Alex, and it really illustrates that even though Native Americans have every interest to distrust the white settler, if research is done in a good way, it can have a good impact. CCHE did a project with the United Community Centers in Milwaukee called Pisando Fuerte. So an issue that those of us with aging parents can probably agree is important is that falling can be dangerous. Did you know that every hour in the US, 3 older adults will die as a result of a fall? And by 2030, that number is supposed to increase to 7 adults per hour. The Latino population in the US is expanding exponentially and hasn't really had any fall prevention programs that were meant for them. So that's what Pisando Fuerte did, was make it with Spanish culture, religious values, and language. They had a party at the end with music and food. And after 6 months, the impact shown here, I think these stats are really great, how much value it had. These comments are translated from the Spanish. It seems like it was really a useful program in terms of the lasting value and impact. Something else we have at UW-Madison that's pretty neat is the Baldwin Grant. And this requires a community partner as well as evidence of community input into the design of the grant. A really great project that's just been going on is led by Howard Varigan at the State Cartography Lab, and also Ann Bushhouse in the GIS program. You can see here on the slide, these green things are culverts in a piece of land. But they have this fancy, cool technology that shows the blue being the areas that are most prone to flooding, up to red where it's not at all prone, and green is kind of medium. So if the Red Cliff has only a certain amount of money to devote to fixing culverts, they might want to concentrate on this. Now, this is called this fancy term that I won't even try to repeat. And also it's important to note that these photos are not actually on tribal land. The Red Cliff are up here on the shores of Lake Superior, or what they call the Anishinaabe Gitchigami. And their data protection is really important to Howard and his team. This program at UW has only been around since 2016. It's a partnership for 3 years between a city or county government and the UW. There are so many students working on these projects. This one in La Crosse was brought in by the city engineer after doing a climate action planning process. And he wanted students to study what's going on with urban heat islands where an area is significantly warmer than its surrounding area. And what they found was, yes, indeed, there was an inequitable distribution of green space. They gave the city some policy options. The community gave some really great feedback because they were appreciative of the resources. They were energized to create their own community science initiatives, and they hope to get more funding to plant more trees. The UCY is a good example of a science shop. And since it is Wisconsin Science Festival week, I should explain to you a little bit. A science shop is just a brokerage where people say, hey, here's the kind of research we can do. Community comes with their ideas, and the science shop staff make the match. UCY does that in that certain way for city and county government, and the Center for Community and Nonprofit Studies, or the Commons in Sohi, or the School of Human Ecology at UW-Madison, has a little research hub called Co-Create. And this is really good at pivoting quickly. At the beginning of COVID, they were excellent at helping people get food delivered when everybody was freaking out and students weren't even allowed to leave campus. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the Morgridge Center as a place for communities to get connected with research possibilities all over campus. We don't normally do our own research, but we did have a science shop program for 3 years while I was working there. And we also have an undergraduate grant called the Wisconsin Idea Fellowship. Well, this is so growing to be such a huge endeavor at UW-Madison, this kind of research, that we had to create a group to meet with each other called the Community Campus Collaborators. All of these entities are members, and I'm going to leave this slide up for you while I continue talking. You can take a photo of this. Howard Berrigan in particular is really looking for more people that want to partner with the cartography lab, and I would hope that people will be able to take advantage of that resource. These are really encouraging trends at UW-Madison. When I first came in 2009 and had done my research and was giving recommendations to faculty advisory committees, I got answers from people like, well, I don't care what you think community engagement means. If I want to tell my students to go volunteer somewhere in the community for 10 hours and write a paper, then that's what I'm going to do. But fortunately, those days seem to be well past us. Now, when I do faculty orientations, more and more faculty every year are coming in saying they want to do meaningful research. So I think that the future of research at UW-Madison is very bright. And I thank you very much for listening to this presentation. And that's it for today. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you for watching this Badger Talks live event produced by the University of Wisconsin-Madison through UW Connects Outreach and the Office of State Relations. Follow us on Facebook and YouTube to see the library of past recorded talks. Please visit badgertalks.wisc.edu to see the schedule of upcoming talks, sign up for the Badger Talks email list, and search the roster of over 400 UW experts who are available to give talks on important issues in your Wisconsin community.